Okay, so Brian, Mark did circulate to the commissioners your email and thoughts and comments on the bylaw, proposed bylaw amendment, amendments, I guess I should say. But in my view, I think your comments are very well placed. We certainly do expect that we're going to at least study and even propose a far more detailed amendment to the bylaws. And certainly one of the concerns in my mind on that is making sure we have your input, because what I was thinking the bylaw amendment should actually be in the longer run is to have the bylaw very precise, very concise, and to keep all of the administrative things in the rules and regulations. Okay.
Pretty much mirror the WPA and the DP regs in the same way. Yeah,
exactly. So, I mean, in order to do that, I agree with you. We'd be rushing it to try to do that now. But I will say there are two things that would, I think, still make it important to meet the town meeting. And they are the following. Number one, we need a definition for a freshwater wetland. And number two, in the current bylaw, we have provision that talks about the method of application, and that's now incorrect since the town's gone digital with the portals, etc. So and that's in the bylaw, where I think, again, if it had been in the rules and regs, that'd be simply fixed. So I think we need to fix those two things at least for this town meeting, but let the town meeting members know we're doing a deeper dive into how to make the bylaw more concise and precise, and we'll be back. This is just a fix. In my view, those two problems are the emergencies.
So the definition of freshwater wetlands, is there any reason why that can't simply be done as part of your regulations currently?
I don't see any, to be honest.
So
Nathaniel Watson.
And the reason I say that is the less you can provide to town meeting while saying, by the way, we're going to come back and redo this all again anyway, I think the simpler it is. So if it's simply a matter of, hey, we want to make sure no one's confused about the application process in the interim, just fix that, and then at your leisure you can update the reg definitions as you see fit. I just, because part of the issue is that there's no clear line on, oh, we need a definition, we don't need a definition. We could be updating lots of definitions. Why just pick that one? So,
well, we don't have. I hear what you're saying, and I agree with you. By the way, I do agree that other than the enabling definitions in the bylaw, I think all the definitions should be in the rules and regs.
Yeah.
So I'm totally in agreement with you, and that's a very good observation on your part, I think.
If I could just come in here.
Yeah.
We use the term freshwater wetlands in the bylaw, and it's never been defined. And I think that as a resource area, and really we have two major resource areas, freshwater wetlands and coastal wetlands. We have a coastal wetland definition. We don't have a freshwater wetland definition. Now, I think, a couple of things are going on here. We need to organize this bylaw and make it a bit more streamlined. And I think we have, and I support most of Brian's comments. I just have a question on one. But I think now we're going back to a total rewrite, which should have been in July when we had our initial discussion on this of last year. So I think, it's like, then what are we really changing at this point?
Well, I see what you're saying. I guess the answer is, do we need to address those issues that brought this to the point of we need to be before town meeting this spring? Okay, so if we're addressing those, they're not that many. All of those changes that have been made to date aren't something that needs to be addressed this spring, but there are two that are and from what I'm reading of it, and I could be wrong, but the things that I mentioned were the ones I saw needing to go before town meeting. And Brian's point tonight, which I think is a legitimate point, and I hear yours too, Mark. The problem is we have bylaws that somebody wrote, like they were bylaws, rules and regulations all in one.
Yeah.
And the amendments really haven't been consistent. So we have to pick and choose. Are we gonna look at this and just continue what has been done in the past, which is band-aided, put some epoxy and, duct tape, and, or are we gonna just fix it? And I would prefer, speaking for myself, let's address the issues that have to be addressed in spring meeting. And I think we need to really fix it. So we're leaving it, excuse me, much better for future commissions. And I think for the practitioners who come before us. But that's my thought.
Yeah.
process. So I do agree with a lot of Brian's comments in that regard. I think he was thinking similarly to myself, not to say we're both right or wrong, we happen to agree with them, but.
Yeah, practically speaking, a lot of what's in the bylaw now are things that need to be able to be updated on a more frequent basis than biannually. You shouldn't have to go to town meeting in order to update the application process. That's just immensely cumbersome. So, and to my point about if you can update the definition of freshwater wetland through the regs rather than in the bylaw, part of my concern with that as well is if you do it through the bylaw, by the time the Attorney General approves it, you're looking at, I don't know, probably August, September.
If then,
Before that goes into effect. Whereas if you do it as a regulatory definition, you could have it done in a few weeks if you wanted to. If it's that important to get that done quickly. Obviously, the application process, if you want to tweak that to say electronic, that's going to have to be a bylaw rewrite. There's no getting around that. So that's part of my thought process is if you're going to be updating bylaws, it just needs a rewrite top to bottom, and it shouldn't be done piecemeal. And if that freshwater wetland is something that you want to make sure is in place now, do it as a regulation, because my recommendation is you're going to do it as a regulation anyway after the bylaw overhaul. So it's your prerogative. You can have the 2-part warrant article if you want for the spring. It's not that complicated, right? You would just need to explain more to town meeting why this definition is getting updated now, even though you're going to be overhauling a bunch of them for the fall town meeting. That's all.
I got a question for you, Brian, and I know it's
Sure.
I'm speaking out of turn, but for my curiosity, would it make more sense to request that the bylaw, the provisions that are currently in it relative to the application process, and just say, for the application process, it's contained in the rules and regulations, and just move it over there?
Yes, so you could do that. It would be a more complicated rewrite because you would be partially changing how the regulation process works, as opposed to doing it. The simpler bylaw update, if you want to just update it for now, is just to say you can submit electronically. Quite honestly, I mean, if push came to shove, I could defend a regulation that says electronic submission shall be sufficient written application for the purposes of the Conco. So you could, by regulation now, simply say, if you submit an electronic application, you have submitted a written application under the bylaw. That you will accept that as a written application. It's just submitted electronically rather than in paper format. You could probably do that, rather than going through the process of doing some amendments now when you're doing an overhaul for the fall. And I don't think anyone would object to that. I think that's reasonable. It's still a written application. You're just scanning it in and submitting it rather than printing out and submitting it. That's all.
Mark, I want to hear some comments from you. I know we've started, and any other commissioner, please join in. This is your opportunity to ask questions and make observations.
I think we're still trying to work out the application process. Okay, the electronic portal was thrust on us. And those who thrust it on us didn't look at the state requirements and the bylaw requirements and how they interweave. Okay, I'm trying to manage an administrative side in the office and make it legal and proper under the two jurisdictions we live under. And we live under two, our office lives under two jurisdictions. I really haven't thought about it this way. What I thought we would do, and I'm not, you know, if the commission wants to overhaul the regulations in the bylaw at some point, that's fine. But that's a draconian step from having not amended anything for over 10 years. I'm trying to get a really antiquated document into some sort of temporal consistency with practice. And that's why I wrote what I wrote, but I'm not an attorney. I don't have the legal nuance in here. And like I said, Brian and I have had a lot of these discussions. I mean, this discussion, I think, is advanced tonight a little farther than what Brian and I spoke of, you know, a week and a half ago or so. You know, and I'm not against exploring that. But for me, I've had consultants say, well, you don't define freshwater wetlands. Okay, we don't define them. So, but we use the term in the bylaw, and I think it needs to be defined in the bylaw. I feel very strongly about that. As to the other things, except for my one comment, which is on page 7, or page 8, excuse me, I'm fine with all of the comments that Brian has introduced. He explained them to me and I understand them. And should the commission want to do that deep dive, you know, I don't think we need to do it next year. I think, you know, what I've heard from everybody is we need to be very thoughtful about this. Trying to get into a fall or spring town meeting cycle is a little difficult, and maybe we should not use those as the drivers. Maybe we should use our thought process and say, okay, we'll live with this for 4 years or 5 years, and then move ahead, or 3 years, because I know, Mike, you had said 3 years, and then move ahead with that deep dive. I really, and I'm speaking from my, you know, my hometown experience of presenting at town meetings. I don't think we want to say, oh, well, we're going to take a deep dive and really revise these, you know, in the near future. I think that'll just knock town meeting socks off, and they'll be shaking their heads going, what are we doing here? That's my concern.
And that may well be a very legitimate concern. Any other commissioners that feel a question is warranted, or a comment, observation? Because I can see, I mean, personally, I think it's possible that if you go to town meeting and say, here's a couple of changes, but we're going to make a slew more later on, and say, well, make them now or wait. What do we, you know, because I mean, I'd feel that way, I think, unless somebody explained to me what was the urgency of these 2 or 3. And if I got the urgency, I probably would then understand it. I say probably, you know, it depends on where in the meeting it is and how tired I am, etc. You know, but
Bylaws always come at the end of meetings, so generally by that point.
you know,
I mean, I think that Brian's comments create a great framework from which we can jump off from, and I think we do that at a later time, whenever that later time is.
No, I agree. I thought, Brian, I thought you did a really good job of analyzing, thinking about, and then giving reasoned advice for us. So I appreciate that a lot. It really
Not a
helps.
problem. I will say, I don't think this is going to be too confusing for town meeting, because what you're doing is markedly simplifying the bylaw and saying, here is a skeleton framework of the requirements, and the Concom will fill the bulk of it in with regulation within the scope of its expertise. And that's not atypical at all in terms of a permitting regime created by the bylaw, and then the guts of it created by regulation. It's fairly typical. and explaining that it's become cumbersome to try to keep updating this bylaw and Band-Aid it over time. I do think the two things, like I said, that you're worried about with immediacy, you can address through your regulations currently. I don't think that's something we need to go to town meeting for. I mean, the current bylaw specifically states that you have a right to, what's the exact terminology that is used? It's, I just closed that out, didn't I? Pretty much, you can adopt regulations to effectuate the purposes of the bylaw. Well, adopting a regulation to determine what the word freshwater wetlands means is effectuating the purpose of the bylaw. It's a term in the bylaw that has no definition. You can create one by regulation. I think effectuating the purpose of the bylaw also includes making clear that a written application includes an electronic one when the town has moved to electronic application processes. That's effectuating the purpose of the bylaw so no one gets stuck. Those two things can get done right away by you guys by regulation. And then, as I've noted in my notes, I think if you're pursuing all these updates to the bylaw, you should just pursue it as this bylaw does not work for us anymore in the format that it's currently in. And we need to really think it through top to bottom about what works in terms of setting up the framework for the permitting processes and clarifying what it is that we are required to do and what it is that we are allowed to do by regulation to fill in that framework. Because otherwise you're going to constantly be coming back to town meeting to tweak things. It's not going to be the fluid process that you want it to be. So again, that's my recommendation, but it is your prerogative what you would like to do. My goal here is not to tell you what to do. It's to give you options and explain my thought process, but it is your decision to make.
No, and I think you do a very, very good job of clearly stating your observations and your opinions, and I agree with you. That's probably why I think so highly of those opinions.
Please say more.
But listen, I'm one vote on all of this, and we are, in a point where time does matter in terms of getting this before the town meeting members. So again, I'd like to hear from other commissioners. I don't want to monopolize this. Anybody? Nobody?
Well, I think Brian did a superb job of clarifying what should be in the bylaws. And so I'm grateful for that effort. Obviously, a lot of work went into that.
Thank you, Jim. I agree. So with that being said, I think we should, my personal feeling is we should adopt the observations and the recommendations of town council. I think they're valid, and then we'll have something we can then present to town meeting. And going forward, I think as new things develop, we should strongly consider having those new things develop within the framework of rules and regulations versus bylaw. And eventually, as Mark said, it may take us a few years, but eventually we'll get to the point where we'll have even a more streamlined version of the bylaw, which I think goes to what I really envision bylaws as being, which is bare bones, the originating source of the ability to make the rules and regulations. And that's where you do because I think town meeting, as Brian points out, town meeting is so infrequent and so difficult in terms of getting on the warrant, et cetera, that change is not going to happen rapidly. If you have to address an issue in a manner which is calling for some expediency, amending the bylaws certainly is not that. And so you're going to have time when you wished you just had it in the regulations and you could amend it at a meeting of the commissioners. But anyway, that's me.
Brian, could I make one comment? I don't want to get this lost in the shuffle.
Sure.
I'm on page 8 of your,
This is the marked up draft.
pardon?
This is a marked up draft, the red line draft.
Yeah, the red line draft. And I'm on comment BC 46. I want to understand what you're saying because it's, as I read your comments, it says that our vote is telling them they're not in jurisdiction on a determination if we choose to go negative. And you're questioning issuing conditions to a determination. And my concern with your argument is they're already in our jurisdiction. They're filing to find out if we're going to seek further jurisdiction as a commission. And therefore, if we issue a negative determination of some type with a condition that they follow, we're saying that we won't take further jurisdiction if you do it this way.
So your jurisdiction is whether or
Already in
not
the
the
game.
bylaw, so your jurisdiction is whether or not the bylaw applies. And if the bylaw applies, they have to file for a permit. And if bylaw doesn't apply, they don't. So the purpose of a request for determination is to determine whether or not the bylaw applies. You
Well,
don't
the
have
bylaw
two
could-
separate standards set up for, there's nothing in the bylaw that has separate standards wherein you can say, we issue a negative determination, so these standards apply, versus we issued a positive determination, so these standards apply. There's nothing there. So if you're issuing a negative determination, but still imposing conditions, what you're actually doing is saying, we have jurisdiction over the site and the work you want to do, because you're imposing conditions.
No, I'm saying that you're already in jurisdiction because you've had to file. And if you do your project in a certain way, we're not going to seek further jurisdiction. They're already in jurisdiction by filing
But
paperwork.
you can't seek further jurisdiction, though. They filed paperwork. Correct me if I'm wrong. They filed paperwork to determine whether or not they need to get a permit. Correct?
Right, and if they follow certain conditions, they won't need to get a further.
But that's the, I mean, that makes no sense jurisdictionally.
Well, the
Because
state
if
allow-
they,
the state allows us to do it.
Well, I mean,
no, but the state has detailed regulations that say whether or not you need an order of conditions versus some other approval. What I'm saying is you don't have that in the bylaw. There's nothing in the bylaw that says you can get a lesser approval. There's just, you get a permit or you don't. So under the, we can rewrite the bylaw accordingly, but under the bylaw, as I read it, you either need a permit or you don't need a permit, but there's no in between. So what, like, I'm trying to figure out, like, contextually right now, someone seeks a request for determination. And you say, what does a negative determination mean? What are you saying when you issue a negative determination?
All right, I'll give you a hypothetical example. We issue a -3 for work in a buffer zone that we feel will not further impact the wetlands as long as you put up erosion control devices.
What's the difference between that and issuing a permit with those conditions?
It's a simpler process.
Well, but what I'm saying is then it's not jurisdictional. All it is a simpler application process. What you're saying is the work is small enough and of de minimis impact that you don't have to go through as more detailed a process. But there's still jurisdiction. Does that, you see what I'm saying? Like you're not saying that the bylaw doesn't apply. You're saying the bylaw applies to the site. What you're saying is we don't think the work you're doing is of great enough import that you have to go through a more comprehensive review.
Yes, that's what.
Okay. So what I'm saying is the bylaw doesn't really account for that. What you're doing is creating two different permits, essentially, a bigger permit and a lesser permit. We can do that, but that's not what the bylaw currently discusses. There's what you're basically saying is there's no actual process anywhere that you're currently operating under wherein you determine, someone can actually say, hey, does jurisdiction actually exist? Do I need to get anything from you guys or no? Like there's nothing there then. So I'm happy to draft a bylaw that comports with what you guys want to do. My only point is the bylaw talks about issuance of a permit. If jurisdiction applies, then it's about issuing a permit with conditions.
You know, I think there, you guys are both here into something here, because on the one hand, when you read the bylaw, it seems as if the application for determination of applicability is merely whether or not what is proposed is within our jurisdiction. When
Yeah.
the wetlands or the buffer to the wetlands, or any of the other velocity zones, etc. And if the answer is it is in that, then under the bylaw, then they have to go to the next step and go and get an order of conditions. So all it is a filter to determine whether they are
Yeah,
within.
it's a jurisdictional test. That's all it is.
And we've been using it a little differently. We've been using it for that purpose in part, but then in part to determine whether or not the proposed activity is of a magnitude that actually requires the notice of intent for an order of conditions. And I agree with you in this respect, Brian. Probably nothing in our bylaw allows us to do that. Our bylaw has it as a simple switch. You're in the jurisdiction, you're out of the jurisdiction. That's, I mean, I read, when I read that in preparation, not for tonight's meeting, but for some comments I had given months ago now, that struck me. I said, I don't think that's how we view this. And I never said anything about it, but you brought it home tonight. This little discussion between you and Mark brings it home. I've always, as a commissioner, view this as an opportunity, sorry about that, view this as an opportunity to not just determine whether they're within our jurisdictional area, because I think most of the professionals that come before us are quite competent and they know where the wetlands are and they understand how to measure to the boundary for the buffer zone. So they would know that, or pretty much they would know that. But the issue is whether we are going to consider what the proposal is significant enough to get an order of conditions to do it. And so I do think we need to amend that to comport with what we've been doing in practice.
If
Yeah,
I
it's
could,
fine.
if I could just say, if somebody walks into the office and says, I want to do X, Y, and Z on such and such a site, can you tell me if I need to file a permit? And we look at, they have enough evidence that shows me that they do or that they don't. I just tell them, no, you're outside of our jurisdiction. You don't have to file. And they don't have to file any paperwork.
So the difference between that and the commission saying a determination is that your opinion isn't binding. And someone in a butter could sue over that. Whereas if the commission issues a negative determination, and the abutter then has the right to challenge that opinion, but there's an official decision on there about whether there's jurisdiction, as opposed to the enforcement agent's opinion, which ultimately, it's good in the sense that it's a good indicator, but it's not legally something that you can rely upon.
Mark, maybe we should have our bylaw track the statute, the regulation that the Commonwealth has, because I think we've been using the Commonwealth standard versus our.
Yeah, I think that's what I think we have been doing.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, that makes sense. You're already doing it one way, but I'm obligated to point out that the bylaw doesn't actually say that.
No, I agree with you. It struck me when I read it a while back, and for whatever reason, it didn't strike me hard enough to say, let's amend this too. But I should have. It should have. That's a good observation. So I think that's something else we have to think about.
Brian, are you suggesting that Mark doesn't have the authority to determine that an application is not required?
I'm saying he can give it his opinion, but it's ultimately under the bylaw, the Conservation Commission's determination that is binding.
So
The-
that would,
so-
that
so-
would, that would imply that every application needs to go to or every consideration needs to go to the commission, whether or not the candidate is looking at modifying the wetlands or the buffer zone.
So the way the bylaw is written now, it's section 360-4C. It says any person desiring to know whether or not proposed activity or an area is subject to this bylaw may in writing request a determination from the commission. So if you want to know if there's jurisdiction, whether based on activity or area, you can ask the commission and they'll issue, and you'll issue a decision.
And the commission doesn't have the authority to delegate anything to Mark?
I mean, if the bylaw said you could. I'll give you the equivalent if someone goes to the building inspector and says, hey, do I need zoning relief here? They can say yes or no, but ultimately the ZBA can disagree. So my point is that Mark doesn't have the authority to bind you. Because ultimately Mark can say something, but then they can make a request to you and you could disagree. Concurrently, if Mark issues an opinion to someone that they don't have to do anything, that doesn't mean a neighbor can't challenge that. That's reality. There's no decision that's ever been issued. Mark isn't issuing a decision under the bylaw that's then
Right.
something that's appealable and defendable.
He's offering his opinion.
Yeah, it's an informed opinion, and he's the enforcement officer, so the likelihood of enforcement happening against his opinion is small, but it's still not a decision of the commission.
No, of
That's my
course,
only point.
but it seems to me to be impractical to have every inquiry come to the entire commission.
No, I see your point too, Jim. But I'll say this, it's similar. Well, not exactly the same, but you know, if I'm building in an area that I know to be quarter of a mile away from any jurisdictional wetlands, I don't even ask Mark.
Yes.
But
Get my building permit. All right, so I think the majority of the folks that are coming to ask Mark's opinion, they're not asking him to rubber stamp what they hope. They're saying, we're not really sure. We're close enough. We're not sure. What do you think? Are we there or aren't we there? And I understand what Brian's saying. Well, maybe, although that makes some sense from a practical standpoint, we would need to, I think, do something maybe formally that we would allow that to happen as a matter of our bylaw or as a matter of our regulation, that, you know, Mark's able to, at the first instance, make that determination. And then either one of two things, either he can, you know, he can say, I'm not sure myself, you want to bring it before the board or the commission in this case, or say, this is what I think, but I think you should also file if you want to get the commission's vote. Or they just take his advice, which a lot of times is what happens, and say, well, he's in agreement. We're not really within jurisdictional areas. Go ahead and get our permit. And then they're taking a bit of a risk, because if indeed somebody challenges it and it brings it before either DEP, they may find out that there's something that was wrong with that opinion. But hey, look, we're running a little bit late on this, guys, so I want to get to the other part of the public meeting soon.
Could I just make a comment? There's a practical matter here. Okay, we have two jurisdictions. And I understand what Brian explained about the state having more regulatory control versus the bylaw. But we have to think about the folks walking in the door. Okay, they're not going to do this analysis. They're looking for guidance from staff, whether it's Adam or myself. And yeah, we give, you know, technically sound opinions. And when we're in doubt, we say, you know, you got to get this affirmed by the commission. Going back to this comment 46, I'm not going to argue with Brian that it bylaw doesn't say it. I think for this go around, the simple thing would be to amend the bylaw language in section 4C. Was that what it was, Brian?
Well, I mean, 4C for Sherman, yeah, it's 4C, 360-4C.
Right. So to amend that language such that we can keep this conditional language in. And again, when we think about it more deeply, we're not going to solve this problem in 10 minutes. I think we have to make it practical for the folks walking in from the street.
Well, I can't revise just that one section. It requires revisions to multiple sections of the bylaw to create a secondary permitting process. Like that is in and of itself a major revision, because you're creating a simpler application process for for what is being determined to be lesser impacted work. Like that's not changing a sentence, that's a whole new section. So I'm not going to do that with 2 weeks to go before town meeting. Like that's not practical. So
I'm sorry, I don't see it as a secondary procedure at all. It's seeking Mark's opinion as to whether or not an application is required. And if Mark's opinion is it is not, and somebody challenges it, well, then it comes to the commission. But if nobody challenges it and Mark isn't out to enforce it, then I don't see that as a separate process.
Well, and that doesn't require anything in the bylaw. That can just happen as it's happening now. I think Mark's point is that he wanted a revision to allow for conditions on a negative determination. And my point is that that's much more complicated than revising a single sentence.
Okay, that makes sense. So my sense is let's leave it like it is. Let's not change it.
Well, I think that we've got some other new issues that have to be addressed, and we're not going to address them before town meeting.
Right.
But that's that's a really good observation on Brian's part. And we just need to make sure that when we do things, we are doing them in accordance with our original authority, either in our bylaw or in our regulation, and we'll have to make sure we tighten that up so that we are operating appropriately. That being said, it's now 7:14, and this was originally scheduled for a half an hour. We've gone on for 45 minutes, and I really think we need to call this discussion concluded so we can move on to the meeting.
My only question is, are you making a determination to give Brian some instruction here or not?
Well, I think he's already given us what he thinks we should be doing. My point is there's more that hasn't even been brought to his attention until tonight. We're not going to get that. He's already said there's just not enough time. So that has to be kicked over for another day. My recommendation would be that we incorporate the suggestions that town council has given us, which I think are all valid points, and then have that presented. Or if there's a degree of uncertainty that is an appropriate way to go, then I think we have to withhold applying this for this upcoming town meeting because we're not ready.
So if there is question about the scope and nature of positive and negative determinations and what you want out of those, and your intent is also to do a substantial overhaul of the bylaw, those things have to go hand in hand, because that's going to be a substantial chunk of revision that needs to be fully incorporated into the broader overhaul. I would not suggest if you went forward with the overhaul as I've drafted it up, and I still need a little bit of information on that anyway, but if you went forward with that at this town meeting, and then in the fall you want to update and change what negative determinations are under the bylaw, that would be a minor overhaul of what was previously a major overhaul. So I think that's going to be where town meeting is wondering what's happening. So if you guys want to put into practice in the bylaw what you've been doing in reality in terms of negative determinations, then I would suggest just waiting until the fall. And as part of regulations right now, clarifying what a freshwater wetland is and clarifying about electronic submissions. I don't want you guys to be doing the same thing twice in consecutive town meetings. And yeah, so I'll leave it at that. If you want to update what negative determination means, we should just do everything in the fall. It's going to be way too complicated otherwise.
Thank you, Brian. That was a clear suggestion. I mean, I think we do want to go deeper into some of these issues, but I think we have to address as quickly as we can the more pressing ones. And if the way to do it is through regulation rather than bylaw amendment, we should do it that way. I just feel like, for me personally, that's how I would vote. And you know, this was, I realize we've had a lot of time spent on this, but you know, we've spent this much time. I don't mind spending a little more to get it right. And like I said, we're here to learn from town council where we can make things better, and I think he's given us some good advice. But I certainly think we need to, and if we're going to address these other issues, we should detail to town council exactly what we want opinion on or what we need help in drafting, and give the roadmap here. Okay. That being said, again, we're looking at we're like 18 minutes past on this one, and this is way out of proportion for what it should have been in terms of an item for discussion. 50 to 48 minutes on item for discussion. So it really isn't fair to everyone who's in the waiting room or actually on the screens now, that we're this far beyond our start time for all of these other items which are before us. And we have a mighty filled agenda tonight. So, Brian, I appreciate your comments, and I would just recommend that we adopt them and amend our rules and regulations to get rid of the problems we now have in terms of inconsistency, and then get the bylaw right when the time comes and not ask for a total amendment at this time only to come back again. That would be my vote.
And I don't need an official vote. If I have a sense of the commission, that's fine, because ultimately you guys would decide whether to sponsor it. And if you don't vote to sponsor anything, you haven't voted to sponsor anything. So I just want to know where I need to focus right now. Should I try to get something finalized for this town meeting, or you want to wait until the fall to really flesh out everything you've been talking about? And what I'll present to you, you could even have it for your next meeting potentially, is just those regulatory updates for those two issues. I can do that fairly quickly.
Hey, listen, I'm speaking for myself now, not for the whole commission. If I heard you correctly, I thought you said we can do what we needed to do for the filing and what we needed to do for the definition in our rules and regulations.
Correct.
I think that's where we should do it. So we take care of that. We bandaged over the problem, and then we'll take our time to get a really well thought out, with your comments, with your working with us, a well thought out bylaw before town meeting in the fall. Instead of trying to do a little bit now and then have to wait years to go back again. That's how I view it.
I share that view, Mike.
I do as well.
Also.
All right, thank you, guys. I will get those reg updates to you as quickly as I can. I'll also inform the town administrator that the bylaw will be held off until the fall, and I will get off the screen so you can move on with your evenings.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Have a
Brian.
good night.
For those of you who are here for the meeting, I'm sorry that we went overtime on the item for discussion, but we are now moving on to our administrative. But before we do, I just want to make sure those who weren't hearing when I introduced this, if you want to speak on a particular item, there's a raise your hand feature, and if not, wave your hand at us. We'll recognize you, unmute you, and allow you to speak. Until that happens, please keep your microphones muted because oftentimes we'll get background noise like we had with me when the phone rang, and it's inconvenient to say the least, and it's certainly disruptive to the presenters. Our first item of business is the approval of the minutes of March 7, 2022. Can I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Have a second on that motion?
Second,
We have a seconded motion. Roll call vote. Richard?
yes.
I'm a yes. Jim?
Yes,
Nat?
Aye, yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
I think I got everybody. Passes unanimously. Next is the approval of the field trip reports of March 21, 2023. A motion to that effect.
So moved.
Second,
Second,
We have a seconded motion. Roll call vote. Richard?
yes.
I'm a yes. Jim?
yes,
Nat?
yes.
Kelly?
Yep.
That passes unanimously. Our third is to receive the minutes of March 21, 2023, executive session. Have a motion for that effect.
So moved.
Second,
Second,
We have a seconded motion. Roll call vote. Richard?
yes.
I'm a yes. Jim?
yes,
Nat?
yes.
And Kelly?
Yep.
That motion passes unanimously. Next is to receive the minutes of March 21, 2023. Can I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second,
Second,
Seconded motion. Roll call vote. Richard?
yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
You're paying attention. Good. I'm a yes. Jim?
yes,
And Nat?
yes.
That motion passes unanimously. We're now going to move on to our field trip reports. The first is a continued request for determination of applicability from Jean Albanese, who proposes a notch wooden bulkhead to lower water level in pond on land described as map 4 lot 5-2, and it's off of Horse Neck Road in Dartmouth. Motion to waive the reading.
Moved.
Second,
Second,
Roll call vote. Richard?
yes.
I'm a yes. Jim?
yes,
Kelly?
Yep.
Nat?
yes.
That passes unanimously. Okay, Mark, what's staff's recommendation on this request?
A little background, this project originally was proposed to put a V-notch in a deteriorating wooden bulkhead from a pond marsh area discharging into Allen's Pond. My comment originally back to them was, what's a notch? I mean, is this sized? What are the flows? And none of that work had been done. Part of that discussion, it was discussed that the structure is really failing, and maybe it'd be prudent for them to remove the entire structure, which is up against a stone-filled crossing of the stream. It's water flows through it, but it's stone. You're high and dry. Having said that, I re-reviewed it, and my recommendation to the commission is to issue a -2.
We have a recommendation from Mark. Any commissioners have any questions? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to issue a -2 determination.
So moved.
Second,
Second,
We have a seconded motion. Roll call vote. Richard?
yes.
Kelly?
Yep.
Jim?
yes,
Nat?
yes.
I'm a yes, that motion passes unanimously. The second is also a request for determination of applicability. It's from Roger and Pamela Shepley, who are proposing to remove an existing tennis court and grade the area to match surrounding natural slope. It's in a buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland as described on land on map 105 lot 70. It's otherwise known as 16 South Lane. Entertain a motion to waive the reading.
So moved.
Second,
Second, roll call vote. Richard?
yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Jim?
yes,
Yes.
And I'm a yes, that motion passes unanimously. Mark, what's staff's recommendation on this determination?
Staff recommends a -3.
Any questions from the commissioners? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to issue a -3 determination on this request.
So moved.
Second,
The seconded motion, roll call vote. Richard?
yes.
I'm a yes. Kelly?
Yep.
Jim?
yes,
Nat,
Yes.
that motion passes unanimously. We're moving on to the third, which is also a request determination of applicability from Raymond Doughton, who is proposing to construct a deck in the buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland. It's on land described as map 126, lot 31, otherwise known as 14 Dorothy Street. Entertain a motion to waive the reading.
So moved.
second,
Motion is seconded. Roll call vote. Kelly,
Yep.
Jim,
yes,
Nat,
Yes.
Richard,
yes,
and I'm a yes. That motion passes unanimously. Mark, what's staff's recommendation on the Doughton's request?
Again, a -3.
Okay, we have a staff recommendation of -3. Any questions? Seeing no questions, I'll entertain a motion to issue a -3 determination on the
So
Doughton's.
moved.
second,
We have a seconded motion. Roll call vote. Kelly,
Yep.
Richard,
yes,
Jim,
yes,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. That motion passes unanimously. The fourth is also a request for determination of applicability. It's from Mark Rasmussen, proposing to cut an area of our agricultural field in the buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland. It's on land described as map 28, lot 7, otherwise known as 55 Slades Corner Road. I'll entertain a motion to waive the reading.
So moved.
second,
The seconded motion. Roll call vote. Richard,
yes,
Kelly,
Yes.
Jim,
yes,
Nat,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. That motion passes unanimously. Mark, what's staff's recommendation on this application?
Again, a -3.
Are there any questions from any of the commissioners? No questions. I'll entertain a motion to issue a -3 determination.
So moved.
second,
We have a seconded motion. Roll call vote. Nat,
Yes.
yes,
Kelly,
Yep.
Richard,
yes,
and I'm a yes. That motion passes unanimously. The fifth item is there also a request for determination of applicability. It's from Jonathan Duval, who is proposing an in-ground pool with concrete apron and removal of 2 trees in the buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland. It's on land described as map 32, lot 17, otherwise known as 12 Blacksmith Drive. Entertain a motion to waive the reading.
So moved.
second,
Second.
Seconded motion. Roll call vote. Kelly,
Yep.
Richard,
yes,
Jim,
yes,
Matt,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. That motion passes unanimously. Mark, what is staff's recommendation on this request?
-3.
We have staff is recommending a -3. Is there any questions? Seeing no questions, I'll entertain a motion to issue a -3 determination.
So moved.
second,
The seconded motion. Roll call vote. Nat,
Yes.
Jim,
yes,
Kelly,
Yep.
Richard,
yes,
and I'm a yes. That motion passes unanimously. We're now going on number 6. It's a request for determination of applicability from Michael and Linda Gouveia, who are proposing to fill in an existing in-ground pool using concrete followed by gravel and topsoil and to plant the area with native plants in the buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland. It's on land described as map 133, lot 32-1, is otherwise known as 2 Sweeney Lane. Entertain a motion to waive the reading.
So moved.
second,
Second.
The seconded motion. Roll call vote. Richard,
yes,
Kelly,
Yep.
Jim,
yes,
Nat,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. That passes unanimously. We had an email request from the applicants to continue this matter until April 25, 2023. Any commissioners have any questions on that? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to continue this matter until April 25, 2023.
So moved.
second,
The seconded motion. Roll call vote. Richard,
yes,
Kelly,
Yes.
Jim,
yes,
Nat,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. That motion passes unanimously. The 7th item is a request for partial certificate of compliance, DEP file 15-503, that's pretty old, from Susan Craig for work completed on land described as map 27, lot 21-48. It's otherwise known as 44 Slades Farm Road. Mark, what is staff's recommendation on this request for partial certificate of compliance?
This is an old filing. It's a subdivision filing, the old Slades Farm subdivision. Which encumbers the entirety of all the lots in the subdivision. Susan is requesting that her singular lot be issued a certificate of compliance, which this commission has done several times under these same file numbers for other properties, as the work for the subdivision was completed in accordance with the order of conditions, but it was never closed out. Recommending a partial certificate of compliance for the lot. The lot is stipulated under file number 15-503.
Thank you. Any commissioners have any questions? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion for the issuance of a partial certificate of compliance.
So moved.
second,
We have a seconded motion. Roll call vote. Richard
yes,
and Nat,
Yes.
Jim,
yes,
Kelly,
Yep.
and I'm a yes as well. That passes unanimously. Our eighth is, I think, similar, but it's a different DEP file number. It's a request for a partial certificate of compliance, DEP file 15-518. It's also an old one from Susan Craig for work completed on land described as map 27 lot 21-48, otherwise known as 44 Slades Farm Road. And Mark, similar circumstances?
Yes, different file number because this was the phase 2 of the subdivision, which really had nothing to do with Slades Farm Road, but was the Abner Potter Way portion of the subdivision. However, it encompassed the entire both phase 1 and phase 2. Again, staff is recommending a partial COC.
Commissioners, any questions? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion for the issuance of a partial certificate of compliance.
So moved.
second,
Seconded motion, all in favor, roll call vote. Richard,
yes,
Kelly,
Yep.
Nat,
Yes.
yes,
and I'm a yes as well. That motion passes unanimously. I almost didn't do a roll call vote. That would have been not very naughty of me. The ninth here is a request for a certificate of compliance on DEP file 15-2637. It's from South Coast Inc. for work completed on land described as map 107 lot 11-2. It's otherwise known as West Smith Neck Road. Mark, what's the recommendation on this request?
Complete certificate of compliance 15-2637, as no work has occurred on site.
Okay, any questions from Mark? I'll entertain the motion then for a complete certificate of compliance on this matter.
So moved.
second,
Give a seconded motion, roll call vote. Richard,
yes,
Kelly,
Yes.
yes,
Nat,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. That motion passes unanimously. The 10th item is a request for a certificate of compliance on DEP file 15-1444. It's from Bruce and Roberta Chase for work completed on land described as map 60 lot 1-13. It's otherwise known as 4 Melnick Lane. Mark, what's staff's recommendation for this request?
Complete certificate of compliance.
Any questions by the commissioners? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion for the issuance of a complete certificate of compliance.
So moved.
second,
Give a seconded motion, roll call vote. Nat,
Yes.
yes,
Kelly,
Yep.
Richard,
yes,
and I'm a yes. That motion passes unanimously. The 11th field trip report is an extension permit request on DEP file 15-2509 from Per Lofberg for selective clearing and drainage utility work on land described as map 108 lots 1, 2, 3. It's otherwise known as 36 Elm Street. Mark, what's the recommendation on this request?
This is to grant a 3-year extension for the last phase of vegetation removal on site. They kind of cut it back last year because of drought conditions.
Okay, so recommendation is to grant it for 3 years.
Yeah,
You have a motion to that effect.
So moved.
second,
Motion is, been seconded. Roll call vote. Richard,
yes,
Jim,
Yes,
Matt,
yes,
Kelly?
Yep.
And I'm a yes, that motion passes unanimously. We have two items which are part of the field trip reports, and they're not on the agenda. Well, first was a request for a certificate of compliance on DEP file 15-2130, and that's from UMass Dartmouth, care of Christopher Garcia, for work proposed but never started on land described as map 49, lot 19, otherwise known as 285 Old Westport Road. Mark, staff's recommendation on this.
We're recommending a complete certificate of compliance. The reason being, you will be having a public hearing later on tonight for the very same project. I'll get into the details of it then. No work had been done under file number 2130, so we're recommending a complete certificate.
Any questions from the commissioners? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion for the issuance of a complete certificate of compliance on file 15-2130.
So moved.
second,
The seconded motion. Roll call vote. Richard,
yes,
Kelly,
Yep.
yes,
Matt,
yes,
and I'm a yes as well. That's unanimous vote. The final, which is the 13th, is an extension permit request on DEP file 15-2521 from the White Family Trust, care of Nina White Williver, to repair a seawall on land described as map 105, lots 20. It's otherwise known as 43 Beach Avenue. Mark, what's staff's recommendation on this request for an extension?
This order of conditions is about to run out in May of this year. The petitioner has requested an extension because the seawall had been significantly damaged due to the storms over the past several months, and not being sure of whether they'd be able to get the work done in a timely manner. They wanted to extend to allow for the repairs. It's all in conformance with the plan of record. Also, you should be aware that they may be asking for an amendment to the order of conditions because they may want to modify the wall at a later date to put in a stone staircase integrated into the seawall. So staff is recommending a 3-year extension to file number 2521.
Any questions from any commissioner? I'll entertain a motion to grant a 3-year extension on the permit for 15-2521.
So moved.
second,
The seconded motion, roll call vote. Jim? I caught you muted, didn't I? You're still muted.
yes,
Okay, Nat,
yes,
Kelly,
Yes.
Richard,
yes,
and I'm a yes. That motion passes unanimously. And long last and finally, we're moving on to the public hearings. And our first public hearing is a continued public hearing on DEP file 15-2659. It's a notice of intent from Potter Street Solar LLC for a single-family dwelling and a ground-mounted solar panel array on the rear portion of the lot within bordering land subject to flooding and the 100-foot buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland. It's on land described as map 138, lot 154. It's otherwise known as Potter Street. I'll entertain a motion to waive the reading.
So moved.
We have a motion.
second,
Seconded. Roll call vote. Richard,
yes,
yes,
Kelly,
Yeah.
Jim?
yes,
And I'm a yes, that motion passes unanimously. The applicant has requested continuance by email, has not given us a date. So,
Let me give you a little background on where we are with this. Since our last discussion during the previous continued public hearing on this file number, we asked for revisions. They did in fact make some revisions, not all. Requested additional information. We have not gotten that information. They have not gotten a sign off from our drainage consultant because he has similar concerns to what is being proposed as I do in relation to drainage and groundwork and sediment and soil quality on the site. Having said that, I issued and you did receive comments from me, responses to the applicant's comments on our drainage consultant's comments. You can follow that train. And in fact, we're at a stalemate right at the moment. However, tomorrow, DPW, the drainage consultant, myself, and the applicant via Zoom to discuss issues, and hopefully move this forward. A few other issues have arisen since as this project has gone on, or this proposal has gone on. We will address those tomorrow, and hopefully we'll have some sort of resolution moving forward. There was no time frame for the continuance. You could make it for 2 weeks. You could make it for a month. I mean, that's your call. At this time, if I were to make a recommendation tonight, I would recommend denial. And the comment I just made for file number 2659, those comments are consistent with the next two, 2660 and 2658. I say those as a matter of record because I really don't want to repeat myself again.
Thank you, Mark. And I appreciate the comments being global for 1, 2, and 3. I'm inclined to say I would grant the request for continuance, but I'm not going to put it on for the next meeting. It'll be a month from now.
That would be May 9th.
I'll put it on for the May 9th meeting, and I would note to the applicant that this has been continued quite a bit, so this will be the final continuance, and that on the meeting on May 9th, we should have answered all of your questions, because we will either allow them to withdraw without prejudice or to vote. I just want it to be real clear to them. We're not going to keep kicking this can down the road. That part doesn't have to go in the motion, by the way. So we'll have a motion to continue this matter until our, is it May 9, 2023 at 7 p.m. meeting.
So moved.
Second,
We have a second motion. Richard Mallon.
second, excuse me, yes.
That's okay. Jim,
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yeah.
and I'm a yes as well. That passes unanimously. The second is a continued public hearing, DEP file 15-2660. It's on the notice intent from Potter Street Solar LLC for a single-family dwelling and a ground-mounted solar panel array on the rear portion of the lot within bordering land subject to flooding and the 100-foot buffer zone to bordering vegetated wetlands. It's on land known as map 138, lot 144-1, otherwise known as Potter Street. I'll entertain a motion to waive the reading.
So moved.
Second.
With a seconded motion, roll call vote. Nat,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yep.
wake up, Richard. Richard,
Yes, I'm right here, yes.
yes. That motion passes unanimously. Similarly, the applicant's requesting a continuance, and I would suggest a motion to continue until the May 9, 2023 public hearing at 7 p.m. Again, Mark, with the same comments that they should be prepared to go forward with all of the issues addressed, or withdraw without prejudice.
So moved.
Second,
Seconded motion, roll call vote. Jim,
Yes.
Richard,
yes.
Kelly.
Yep.
Nat,
Yes.
and I'm a yes, that motion passes unanimously. The third is a continued public hearing. Again, same issue here. It's from Potter Street Solar LLC, proposing a ground-mounted solar panel array on the rear portion of a lot within bordering land subject to flooding and the 100-foot buffer zone to bordering vegetated wetlands. It's on land described as map 138, lot 144-2. It's on Potter Street, and this is in reference to DEP file 15-2658. I'm entertain a motion to waive the reading.
So moved.
second,
We have a seconded motion. Roll call vote. Kelly,
Yes.
Richard,
yes,
Jim,
yes,
yes,
and I'm a yes, that motion passes unanimously. And since it's the same as we've done for the other two, I would hope we'd have the same motion to continue this until May 9, 2023 at 7 PM, again with the same admonition about being ready to go forward or withdraw.
So moved.
second,
Second,
Mr. Chairman, as a point of record, I think that you should cite the file number, just for the record.
I thought I did put it back in. But it's the file's number is 15-2660. I didn't do it at the beginning, but I looped it in at the
Oh,
end.
no, I thought you were doing 2658 now.
Oh, yes, 2658, that's right.
You've done the first two.
Yeah, 2658. I'm sorry, 2658. I may have said 2660 and I apologize. You're right. So this is 2658. So entertain a motion to continue 2658 until May 9, 2023 at 7 PM, again with the admonition of be prepared to go forward or withdraw.
So moved.
second,
The seconded motion, roll call vote. Jim,
yes,
yes,
Richard,
yes,
Kelly.
Yeah.
And I'm a yes, that motion passes unanimously. Mark, thank you for pointing that out. I would have had two motions on the same file number. Fourth is a public hearing file DEP 15-2676 from Greater New Bedford Regional Refuse Management District, proposing to repair the southern stormwater basin in the buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland. It's on land described as map 84, lot 25. It's otherwise known as 300 Samuel Barnett Boulevard. Entertain a motion to waive the reading.
So moved.
A second on that?
second,
Second motion, roll call vote. Kelly,
Yes.
yes,
yes,
Richard,
yes,
and I'm a yes, that motion passes unanimously. Excuse me, on behalf of the applicant, is there someone here? Please unmute yourself, Mr.
Muted.
Yeah, just unmute yourself and we'll be all set. At the bottom of your screen, there should be a little microphone button. Just click it.
There we go. I wasn't being allowed to unmute, but now I am.
Oh, okay, good.
Yes, my name is Sam Chapin. I'm with Brown and Caldwell, consulting engineers for the Refuse District. And if you would like me to present the project, I'm ready to do so.
Please do.
Okay, the project is, and if you would like me to share my screen, I can.
Yep, that would be helpful.
Yep. I will show you this. So the project is the repair of a berm surrounding one of the two stormwater management basins on the property of the Crapo Hill landfill up in North Dartmouth. What you see on your screen here is the most up-to-date topographic plan of the entire landfill. We do produce such a plan like this on a yearly basis. And this is the 2023 plan, and the basin in question I have circled here in red. What happened is in mid-January of this year, the discharge pipe to this basin clogged. There was a buildup of water, and there was a breach in the side of the berm that allowed the basin to partially drain, and this breach caused an erosion. And the district staff called the conservation office that day, and I believe Mark came out that day and took a look, and a temporary repair was implemented right away. I have some photographs of that, and Your staff advised that this would require filing of a notice of intent. So we did so in order to repair this berm. This is a close-up of the South Basin. You can see the wetland delineation here. Some years ago, we did a wetland replication, which is now here. And the location of the breach in the berm is right about here. If you can see my cursor, it's right there. We do have also proposed, in order to help maintain this basin, and in the event that we have another breach like this, we are proposing an access way that will be built within the buffer zone between the outer part of the berm and the wetlands. And my cursor is following along this. This would be a 10 to 12 foot wide access way so that a small piece of equipment could get in there, clean out the discharge structure when that becomes necessary, and if there's another breach of the berm, to allow us to get in there. We do have a detail here of erosion control barriers, and the proposed access way will have, it'll be very simple. We're going to have a layer of geogrid or a similar geosynthetic underneath to reinforce the structure of the ground, and then up to 12 inches of a gravel subbase, which will be similar to a Mass DEP gravel. And this access way will only be used in case of when maintenance is required for the berm. I do have some photographs which we can take a look at. This is the site locus map here. We're tucked up in the north eastern corner of the town of Dartmouth near Quapo Hill. Access is through the New Bedford Industrial Park. Okay, we have all the figures here. This is just the estimated habitat of rare wildlife and the natural heritage map showing that we are not within a mapped area for any of that, nor are we within a floodplain. This is the most recent flood hazard map that shows that we are not in a floodplain. And here we go with some photographs. This first one is the breach itself. Let's see if I can bring this down. I have to move our photographs. There we go. Whoop. No, didn't mean to do that. Back here. So this top photo is from the outside of the berm looking towards the basin, and you can see the erosion that took place, and then the temporary repair was implemented with sandbags and a tarpaulin over the area where the berm. I should add that after this was discovered, one of the first things that the district staff did was to clean out the clog in the discharge pipe, so that lowered the water level in the basin, and this breach did not discharge any more water. But here is a photograph of the discharge pipe itself in the southern corner of the basin, just so you can see what it looks like. And the breach is right up here in the top of your screen. So here we have it keeps wanting to do that to me. I'm sorry, if you'll bear with me. Why don't we just go full screen? And I hope that's sufficient for people to see. The top the top photograph is taken from the top of the berm looking into the breach. After it was discovered, some erosion control was placed there in case there was any further discharge. And you can see by the cobbles in this picture, when the water reached the berm, it did flow southerly along the base of the berm and reached the existing discharge channel. So fortunately, none of the discharge here entered the wetlands itself, because we did have, there was sort of a natural channel to go down to the discharge channel. The photograph below, it was a cold day. You can see that it had iced over, but that's the breach in the berm, the view from across the basin. And there's a view looking north. The landfill is in the background. You can see up here a bit of the cross section of the berm, and you can see where it eroded. And below here, we have another view showing the temporary repair and where the erosion took place. And those are the photographs that I have. And we do propose it, if the commission sees fit, to issue a permit to repair this. We did submit a specification for the material and the construction, and the district would seek to implement this repair this spring as soon as possible. And that is the extent of the project, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that the commission might have.
Thank you for your presentation. Mark, I would be interested in hearing staff's observations and comments on this proposal.
In deference to time, I think Sam did an excellent job of summarizing what transpired. I would highlight a few things. The immediacy with which the district contacted our office. We were on site immediately, and we worked out with the district staff how we thought a prudent solution would be. They reacted to the episode with great quality and swiftness, and Sam is correct. While there was a large blowout, it did not discharge directly into the adjacent wetland. It sort of flowed and dissipated down along the toe of the detention basin slope, the outboard slope. So there was really minimal damage to the resource areas. We're in reasonably close proximity to the breach. The two things before you are the correction of the breach in a more permanent matter, which I do think we submitted the specifications, which were very much same material in kind to restore the berm. The other thing was they had asked, right now the outboard toe of the berm is clear. It gets grown up with, scraggly, shrubby stuff that, is partially encumbering on transiting along the toe. And I mean, a structure like this needs to be maintained. So they discussed with me, and I think it's a very prudent idea for them to put that gravel roadway in around the toe of what would be the western and southern edge of the basin. And I think that they, should, we talked about a more vigorous maintenance plan of the discharge itself. Although I think what happened in January was very much of an episode, it wasn't necessarily long-standing neglect. And so I am prepared to recommend that the commission or issue a standard order of conditions as per the plans dated March 23rd of 2023. I do have a couple of additions. I'd like to see both ends of the access road, which terminate to some fairly accessible roadways. I'd like to see those gated. And I would also modify their erosion and sedimentation control detail to our standard, which is entrenched wattles or hay bales and silt fence to be maintained throughout. And the last, and this was a suggestion of mine, and the district did it, and I think it would be something that they should put into an active plan of maintenance, is to have emergency pumps available should we get another episodic event or series of events as we did in the early winter, so that the pumps could be, set up and running to offset, overfilling of the basin. They did have some pumps available, and they did install them after my suggestion. They worked because they brought the level of the water down in conjunction with the discharge pipe to save the berm. But if this breach happened here, it could certainly happen someplace else. So a little preventative maintenance with having pumps available to be put online immediately, I think would be a good practice. Those are my recommendations.
Thank you, Mark. Does any commissioner have any question of the applicant or staff? I don't see any. Is there anyone in the audience that wants to be heard on this application? I don't see any. That being the case, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded. Roll call vote. Richard,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes,
Matt,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yep.
and I'm a yes. That passes unanimously. Commissioners, what's your pleasure on this request?
Make a motion for a standard order of conditions according to the plan submitted on March 23rd, 2023, and incorporate by reference the additional conditions mentioned by Mark Garrett.
We have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
We have a motion seconded. Roll call vote. Kelly,
Yep.
Richard,
Yes.
Jim,
yes,
Matt.
Yes.
And I'm a yes. That motion passes unanimously. Thank you for a clear presentation, Sam.
Thank you very much, members of the commission, and the district will have no problem implementing the suggestions of your staff.
Thank you. Our fifth public hearing is on DEP file 15-2676. It's an after-the-fact notice of intent from Ronald Oliveira to restore unauthorized and unpermitted vegetation removal, which was in the 100-foot buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland. It's on land described as map 125, lot 7. It's otherwise known as 673 Tucker Road in Dartmouth. I'll entertain a motion to waive the reading.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded motion. Roll call vote. Matt,
Yes.
Jim,
yes,
Richard,
Yes.
Kelly.
Yep.
And I'm a yes as well. That motion passes unanimously. And is there someone here this evening to present for the applicant? Okay, Renee, you have the floor. Please be unmuted. There you go. You're all set.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Rainey Gagnon with Zenith Consulting Engineers. Speaking on behalf of Ron Oliveira, our client. And it's pretty much like you just said. They went in and they did some clearing mistakenly. And so essentially they're looking to just rehab the house and they cleared out that area to provide the new buyer some additional backyard area. We've gone back and forth with Mr. Garrett as far as the restoration of the area. I can share my screen if you'd like to see the plan.
I think it'd be helpful. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
If everybody can see that,
Yes, I can.
can you see my cursor? So I can sort of guide.
Yes, I can.
So the original tree line was just behind the house here. This is 673 Tucker Road. The original tree line sort of went in this direction here. Each of these little circles is a tree that was cut. So we actually went out and located every tree stump that was cut in the buffer zone. The wetland line is located in this area here. And so what we're proposing to do is restore the area in this area here. We're going to replace the trees that were cut in this area, which was I believe it was 27 trees in the restoration area. We're going to replant 27 trees, and then every 10 foot on center, we're going to also plant some shrub species. In addition, we're proposing to provide a permanent barrier along this area here, which will be either a split rail fence or boulders. There are some boulders that are sort of surface stones that are kind of scattered throughout the rear of the property. So we're either going to put in a split rail fence or use those boulders as sort of a permanent barrier. And then also, per Mr. Garrett's direction, we're going to add some signage that says that no disturbance shall occur beyond this point, which is that permanent barrier. And we're proposing to put those signs in every 50 feet along this restoration line. That's pretty much it. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Well, I think we're going to ask for staff's comments, but before they do, I just want to be clear. Those signs you're putting up, you say you're putting it on the edge of the restoration area. Is that the edge of the buffer zone?
It's not the edge of the buffer zone. So we were hoping to retain some of this cleared area as yard area for a potential buyer for the home once it's completed its restoration. So the planting area is this sort of
Yeah, I tell you why I asked the question, because whether or not we agree that what's been cut in part of that area can remain, it's still a buffer zone. So if the signs are on the restoration area, the next owner may mistakenly think that they can do whatever they want in that part of the buffer zone, including a pool, a tennis court, or whatever. And it's just not the case. So that's not going to do it for me. I'll be very candid with you, because that's telling them that we've now converted a buffer zone to upland, which we haven't done. Just so you know, in my view.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah.
Okay, Mark, I'd like to hear your comments on this, please.
Yeah, well, I have several.
I'm sure you would.
First and foremost, with all due respect to Rennie, we've had issues with this applicant before, so I don't think it was an inadvertent cutting based on practice and observation. In terms of your concerns, Mr. Chairman, we do allow the very things that you propose in buffer zones all over town. So in reviewing the original restoration, which was far less than this, I understand that, you know, as a resident, it's going to need a certain amount of yard area. There are a couple of buildings on the parcel. What was there was a pretty ratty, opportunistic nuisance thicket. So to put signage at the edge of the 100-foot buffer zone, I don't think is very prudent, considering the fact that the 100-foot buffer zone bisects the house on a diagonal. I mean, there has been activity on this property throughout, throughout time. Yes, what occurred last fall was somewhat more dramatic than in previous. We have been working with Stephen Schmiel, who was hired by Zenith as a wetland consultant, and he and I both worked out, I think, what is a reasonable plan. I think that, and I know we have a comment from an abutter who doesn't think this is enough restoration. I tend to disagree with that, given the fact that we're not restoring a wetland, we're restoring a buffer zone. And we have a lot of buffer zones that have been turned into lawn areas, pools, tennis courts, and the like throughout town. So I think this is pretty consistent with practice over time. I think that the permanent structure, and if it's a fence, it will have to be maintained by the owner. If it's boulders, they don't have to be maintained. They don't go anywhere. The boulders that Rennie is talking about are somewhat substantial. And the signage, I am modifying the language. I believe that the language was that they're proposing is no disturbance of any kind, ... I have added no dumping or disturbance of any kind, because the one concern I have is this is a prime area for dumping lawn clippings and leaves over the fence or over the barrier. And disturbance of any kind, while we all may know what that means, there are those who will parse that phrase and say, well, I'm not disturbing it, I'm only dumping in it. So I think that should be a little bit more clear. Staff has spent a lot of time working on this with the consultant, answering questions. I think it's a reasonable approach for where this site is. They have improved the site dramatically. And I know that the concern was about increasing real estate value. Well, it was a deteriorating structure not very long ago. And now it's a reasonable single-family development. And I think that this plan that is before you, which represents a little bit more than 50% of what was cut out, but what was cut out was the trees were good trees, but the understory was a little ratty. I think it is certainly a reasonable compromise to move forward. So we're proposing we're recommending to issue a standard order of conditions with our standard replication conditions per the plan dated March 29th, 2023. We are stipulating a completion date of June 23rd, 2023. That is an aggressive schedule. The owner, Mr. Oliveira, kind of dragged his feet in responding to our enforcement order. That was time he lost, not time that we're going to lose. This planting will be completed or will be in further violation by the end of the spring. And I would add the fence line maintenance, if it's a wooden fence, throughout by the owner, successors, or assigns. And signage will read no dumping or disturbance of any kind beyond the fence line. Those are my recommendations.
Thank you, Mark. I just wanted to be clear. My comments, I certainly wasn't expecting them to put signage on their house, but you know, I know that people have utilized the buffer zone area for various and sundry things, such as tennis courts and pools, but they've come before us and gotten an order of conditions. And I just want to be very clear, that's still a buffer zone, and the rules and regulations still apply. We didn't magically convert it to uplands.
We can add a condition if you want, and any further work within the buffer zone needs to file for a permit.
I think I would, just to be clear, so that somebody
We can do that.
down the road doesn't mistakenly think that the sign meant anything
Yeah.
before here. You can do what you want with.
Okay. We'll do that.
All right. Now I'll say commissioners, any commissioner who wants to ask questions of either Mark or the applicant through Renee, please do so. I know we have had people in the audience. I'm sure some are here for this. So I will say now, anyone in the audience that wants to speak on this, you're welcome to do so. Use the raise your hand feature or wave your hand so that we can see and recognize you, unmute you, and let you tell us what you want on this application. So who in the audience wants to be heard on this application?
We have Ken.
Ken is waving his hand, so Ken, unmute yourself and you can tell us what you think.
I'm actually a butters right next door. The only problem I have is in the buffer zone that's wide open now. All the trees are starting to just fall onto they're on my property and they're just coming down like dominoes. I mean, what can I do now?
These are trees that are on they're your trees and they're falling down?
Yes.
Mark, did you observe any of that or
Times that I've been on site, I did not see them. I'm not saying it didn't happen, but I did not observe them.
And Renee, do you have any explanation for this gentleman's trees now failing?
Just for clarification, I'm not sure where his property is relative to ours.
I'm on the left,
You're on the left.
Why don't
on
you
the left house.
put your
To the
screen
north.
back?
To the
Yeah.
north of the parcel.
Yes, 679.
So, I'm actually not sure why, I mean, I, as you can see here, they did overcut off of the property and I was under the understanding that we had permission by the abutters to the north and to the east that they were okay with us replanting the area that we disturbed on their property. I believe we do have that in writing as well, but I honestly haven't seen that. I haven't seen trees over there falling either, so I'm not sure what would have caused that.
Well, if you want to come out, you can take a look. You can see plenty of them now. There's like 3 or 4 of them back there.
But they
If I could
can't.
ask you a question, Ken, are
Sure.
these in lawn area or are these trees in the woods?
They're in the woods where they opened it up, that within that 100-foot zone, and they're falling from, say, the right to left onto, I don't even know if they're on my property or they're the next door property, but they've domino effect. There's about 3 of them I can see.
But those weren't cut by anybody. Those are coming down now after the cutting.
Correct.
That's interesting. I would have I wouldn't know any reason why that would happen myself, other than perhaps they were already diseased, and now that they've cut down some trees and shrubs, it's getting more of the full brunt of the wind.
Correct.
Does that make any sense, Renee, or Mark? I mean, trying to think of how cutting the
Well,
trees.
it's possible. I mean, I don't know what trees they are, what their exposure are. I mean, if they're 30 feet into the woods and they're falling down now, my question is, and I'm not suggesting this is fact, but my question is, did they fall just because they fell? It was their time to fall, or did they fall because, as Ken indicates, they are more exposed. I don't know. I don't know the trees. They clearly, there were not, when I was on the site, the 3 times I've been on the site, I did not see toppled trees on Ken's property. That's not to say they're not there, but I didn't see them. They were not obvious to me. And I did not, so I could not make any kind of conclusion that one event caused another. I didn't see the other events, so I can't answer that question.
Yeah, and I can't either. I went out there one time and I didn't see those either. But and again, I'm not refuting that that's happened. But I wouldn't know why that would happen.
Okay,
Yeah, it seems like, Ken, the cause and the effect are kind of not co-joined here. What they've done is they've taken down trees and shrubs, creating a lawn area, but none of that would normally have a negative impact on surrounding healthy trees, normally, to my knowledge. Unless.
Right. And just to be clear, the stumps are still intact in the ground, so they haven't been torn up and disturbed the ground surrounding either.
now who would be responsible for those trees that are coming down now? Because now they gotta go in there. Now, how do I go about that?
Well, if they're on your property, you can go in there. If they're not on your property, you can't. Somebody else's.
Well, yeah, I mean, they've pulled down like 5 different trees now.
Well, their plan is, they have recognized they actually cut down a lot more than 5 trees. And their
Yeah.
plan is to replace some of the trees they've cut down, and they're
No,
seek-
I'm saying the trees that are falling have like domino effect all the way across my property, like probably like 40 feet now. There's probably like 5 different trees that took down on its way down. So I just want to make sure that I can take care of those. And, I don't think it should be, well, it's cause and effect. That's what I would say.
Well, yeah, but I'm not seeing the connection between that. Normally, like I said a moment ago, if you cut down trees and you don't disturb the soils or put any kind of chemicals into the soils, I don't know why a healthy tree would be adversely affected by what they've done. It wouldn't be, in my view. So I don't know if the trees that have come down have already been diseased. And now that the wind is blowing, they're falling down because they're dead already. I don't know. I haven't
Yeah.
seen. So I don't want to, I'm not certainly not going to tell you that's what happened, but I'm hard pressed to find a logical scientific reason why the activity, although certainly not done appropriately, right, with permission, but it's not to say that they couldn't have gotten permission if they had come in before they started. But I don't see where that activity would have caused trees that they didn't touch to fall
Mike,
down.
could I ask Ken another question?
Sure.
You
Yeah.
said something, I want to make sure I understood. You were talking about trees toppling.
Correct.
What caused the first tree to topple? Did they cut a tree that fell on your trees?
No, it's right on the border. It's like where.
I understand that, but my question is, what caused the trees that are toppling on your property?
Well,
What,
now it's wide open in the backyard. So, I mean, those trees on that side, there's like, probably, I can see a couple more, but I haven't gone back there, but there's probably from the wind.
so you're saying that it's wind damage?
Correct.
Okay.
'Cause that's
Just-
wide
I
open.
just wanted to know what was the cause of the problem, aside from the clearing. I get that your contention is that that's increased the wind.
Correct.
Yeah, I got it.
That's it.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Is anyone else in the audience that wants to be heard on this application? And everyone else basically has their screens blank, so if you do, you're gonna have to.
We have a
use
raised
the
hand, Samsung SM5. Right below. They're muted. Don't know who they are.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, so if you unmute yourself, we'll be happy to have you speak. Samsung SMA5. They're still muted. Does anyone else want to be heard? I don't want to cut off somebody who wants to hear, to speak. I don't see any activity there. Any other comments? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to close the public portion of the hearing.
Moved.
Second.
We have a seconded motion. Roll call vote. Pat,
Yes.
Richard,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yep.
Jim,
Yes,
and I'm a yes, that motion passes unanimously. Commissioners, you've heard the presentation. You understand Ken has had a problem with his trees, but there is another abutter who had sent us a letter in opposition, essentially feeling that the applicant should be required to restore everything they did, that they shouldn't, and I'm paraphrasing here, but Mark sent that letter to everybody, all the commissioners, that the applicant shouldn't be able to profit off of having done something without permission. So that's what's all before us. So
Mr. Chairman, could I make a request that you name the person for the record, just so?
I don't have their name. Yeah, we could read the whole letter.
Didn't they signed the letter, didn't they, on the bottom?
Yes.
I think they did. I just don't have it in front of me, Mark.
Oh,
have
you
it.
don't have,
I have it
Yeah.
handy. It was Tracy and Antonio Souza.
yes, those were the names.
So, thank you. Their comments were in opposition to. Ken's was, I would take that not necessarily in opposition, but just saying what the heck's going on with my trees. And I think that's, and he thinks that's related to what they did, and he could be right. I'm struggling to figure that one out. But anyway, that's what's before us. So what's your pleasure as the commission on this request?
Make a motion for a standard order of conditions, including our replication conditions, per the plan submitted March 29th, 2023, with a completion date for the plantings of June 23rd, 2023, and all additional conditions as mentioned by Mark Garrett.
Okay, just one other little comment. I'd like them to have some note in here that the buffer zone still remains a buffer zone, so further future activity will require at least consultation with the Conservation Commission.
Mr. Chairman, I have that noted here, so that I will include that as a condition.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second on the motion?
Second.
We have a seconded motion. A roll call vote. Jim,
yes,
Richard,
Yes.
Nat,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yep.
and I'm a yes as well. That motion passes unanimously.
Mr. Chairman, before we move on, if Ken is still listening, Ken, give my office a call. Let me come out and I'll take a look and see what kind of options you have relative to this. Did you hear that?
Ken, did you hear?
You're muted.
You're muted.
Yep. Yes, I'll give you a call.
Call my office and we will come out and I'll take a look at it.
Okay, Mark, that sounds good.
Okay?
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
We're moving on now to the 6th.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Excuse me. As I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, I have an airport detail and I must leave the meeting now.
Duty calls, Mr. Mallon, you're
Yes.
excused.
Thank you very much. Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Hi, Rich.
We still have a quorum. All right, there are 4 commissioners and that's a quorum. So we still have enough to finish the public hearing. The 6th item of business is public hearing on DEP file 15-2678. It's an abbreviated notice of resource area delineation from Jose Fernandez on land described as map 71, lot 56, otherwise known as 780 Collins Corner Road in Dartmouth. Entertain a motion to waive the reading.
Moved.
Second,
The seconded motion, roll call vote. Matt,
yes.
Jim,
Yes,
Kelly.
Yep.
And I'm a yes, that passes unanimously. And for the applicant, we have who's here this evening on behalf of the applicant? Could somebody please let Alex in, please?
Yeah.
Okay. Alex, you're muted. Before you start, I just want to let you know, we have 4 commissioners, which means that you need a unanimous vote of the 4 commissioners present in order for a positive outcome. So I tell you that because I will give you the opportunity, if you so choose, to request a continuance until we have a more full board. We do have a quorum, but it will require unanimous vote.
Well, it's for the record, my name is Alex Garadetsky. I'm a professional engineer. My office is in Fall River, 422 North Main Street, and I'm representing Mr. Fernandez. For your consideration is wetland line delineation approval. That's the filing, and I received communication from your Conservation Commission agent that has no problem with wetland line as shown on the plan. So that's all what we're requesting at this moment. It's NRED, so I don't see why there should be any issues with wetland line itself. So if you wish,
That's fine. I just wanted to make sure you're aware of the fact that we.
I understand, but it's at this moment it's pretty straightforward. So if you wish, I can share the screen to show the
Absolutely. If you'd like to do that, that'd be great.
sharing. I don't know if it's working or not. Does okay. Can you see? I don't know.
There you go. I can see it now.
Okay, well, all right, that's perfect. So for your consideration again is a lot 56 on map 71. It's the house, it's a 780 Collins Corner Road. It's located approximately several hundred feet north of the Old Fall River Road intersection. As you can see, is a plan with delineated wetland line. Delineation was done by Mr. Walsh and located by my company using GPS equipment. You also see in the background is aerial photographic map, and I took liberty to show contours based on a web survey. So wetland line and as you can see at the far northeast corner, there is a shingle island river, but it's far away from anything, so we have not delineated either of the riparian zones nor mean annual high water line. So again, your staff reviewed the line, and I received a phone call that wetland line is fine as presented, and that's pretty much it. And if you have any questions, I'll gladly attempt to answer.
Thank you very much, Alex. Mark, I'd like to hear staff's comments on this delineation.
Yeah, Alex is correct. Adam went out and deems the wetland line accurate in the field. So we would be recommending in a couple of minutes an ORAD in support of the delineation. However, there are a couple of conditions that I'm going to put on that ORAD, or I'm recommending to put on that ORAD. First of all, Ms. Gorodetsky indicates that they did not show any riverfront area, as they're not proposing any activity as of yet. No need, because the NRAD was for the vegetated wetland line. But I would stipulate a condition for any future work. They will need to add the extent of the riverfront area shown on any plan moving forward. Riverfront area, everybody says top of bank, but top of bank is a very vague definition. It's actually the top of bank full, which is the annual 1-year flood elevation, pretty much, plus or minus. So that sometimes can get a little bit broad. We have a low flat area in the eastern portion of the site, down gradient of the wetland line. So it is decidedly possible that the edge of river exceeds the actual physical top of bank that we see visually. That's not necessarily the regulatory top of bank in this case. So I think it is important that that be shown on any plan moving forward. The second concern we have is if you look on the plan, right midway along the northern property line, which is the top line, is a large cleared area, and it's been cleared for quite a while. And I specifically had Adam measure off from the wetland line, and it is, you know, based on tape through woods and stuff like that, it is approximately 100 feet away, and that is a large burn area. And he's had burn permits from District 3 for several years. That feature has been in place based on aerial photo review for several years. It largely and most likely entirely falls outside of the buffer zone, but that area cannot expand anymore to the east. And I think that we should you know, put that in as a condition. So 2 conditions to the ORAD affirming the line would be showing the riverfront area on any future plan, and no expansion of the burn area without conservation approval. That's my recommendation.
Thank you, Mark. Does any commissioner have any questions of either Alex or Mark? Seeing none, is anyone in the audience that wants to be heard on this request or delineation?
Looks like
Yeah,
Gloria.
Gloria Bancroft has her hands up.
You're about
Yep.
one
Can
more
somebody
here.
unmute Gloria so she can speak? You can unmute yourself then. There you go. You're unmuted.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. I can.
All right, so I did have a couple of comments and a question. First of all, I just wanted to notify the commission that our abutter notification did not indicate a Zoom meeting this evening. So there was some confusion and frustration on the part of a few abutters as we arrived at Town Hall and went to room 103 to find it in darkness. It wasn't until I looked at the agenda for your meeting tonight that I saw the Zoom. So I just want to, bring that to your attention if that's something that you can clarify for future notifications that go out.
Appreciate that. And just so you know, I don't think you heard it in the very beginning because we did it at 6:30. But on March 29th, Governor Healy extended the ability to do hybrid remote meetings until March 31, 2025. And as a commission, we voted to continue doing our meetings remotely. So I think you may have unfortunately gotten a letter that was drafted and written before Governor Healy extended it, and we had no choice but to. But I think there should have, I agree with you, that's unfortunate for the people that got it, to get in their cars, drive over to Town Hall only to find out the meeting's not there. Note to us in the future, if that happens, where there's a meeting scheduled for in-person and it gets changed to remote, or vice versa, we should definitely send out a new notification to the abutters.
Just as, if I could respond to Gloria, it is in the legal ad that was posted in the newspaper. However, I would say that the language, which slightly predated me, was a little awkward. I've already changed that language to be a little bit more specific in that we really don't need to mention room 103 because we're not using it. So.
No, I understand from reading your agenda that the governor had changed that and you had voted. However, as a resident, we get the abutter notification. We don't go looking for the newspaper after getting a notification, right? And the notification also said 7 p.m. So I just want you to be aware of that. So my phone is going to die, and if that happens, I will grab another abutter's phone because I'm in the room with 4 abutters. And so one question I had is clarification as to the wetland flags. I noticed that they're on our property, and what is the, if someone could clarify, when someone does a wetland, go out and does a wetland survey, are they to notify an abutter when they're on their property, and why would flags be placed on ours?
May I answer this question?
Certainly.
We are not. That's a wetland botanist. When he was placing the flags, it was very hard to establish where exactly property line was. So he placed these flags. But if you see, I put this line once the property line was surveyed, and we overlaid accurate property lines, where we're making no claims to the flags on your property. Just some things that happen inadvertently. We are not approving your wetland line. We don't know what happens, and it just we located where we located. We located flags before we did the survey of the property lines, so we really didn't know. So he overshoot it a little bit. So that's what this is the thing that happened, because he kind of aligned himself with a stone wall. If you see, there's a stone wall up front, so he thought maybe more or less. Things like that happen, unfortunately. But from the next plans, if there are any, those flags, believe me, will be removed. You will not see them. Once what it is, even the fee that I filed did not incorporate the land. Everything is measured from one property line to another. Those things happen, unfortunately. Please accept my apology, but that's what it is. We had no intention to flag your wetland line.
Gloria, I could modify the recommendation to not include those flag numbers that are on your property. Therefore, they would not be of record in the ORAD.
That would be fine. This is not the first time that this happened. Wetlands have been surveyed out in this property before by this landowner. And he does have a fence that divides the property. It's quite an extensive fence, so it's pretty visible as to the property line via the fence. But in any event, I just wanted to make that note. And my other question is, obviously someone has gone through a great extent to have the survey done and pay a good fee here. Is there a proposed project that is being planned? And if he could have the courtesy of sharing that with the abutters?
That question, as an engineer, as a professional at this moment, I'm filing only wetland line approval. Whether something will be there or not, probably yes, but that would be up to the applicant. I cannot answer for him, and that you should communicate with him. I really have authority to speak on this matter. Please understand me. Probably yes, maybe not. I don't know at this moment. That's the best answer I can give.
I'll speak to the point that a careful developer will always first want to know what the parameters of the lot are, not only in terms of the lot lines, but also resource areas, etc., to find out what's buildable, and then probably go back and figure out what they want to do with the buildable portion. So I would guess that they're going to do something there. They're just not doing a delineation for the sake of an academic or theoretic. But if they're staying outside of our jurisdiction, they don't have to come back here. They may have other issues with different departments. If they're coming in within the buffer zone, they'll be back before us requesting an order of conditions. But we perhaps don't even know right now until this gets approved, what it is that they're going to do.
No.
Is the flags that we see on the plan, is that the wetland line? And so the buffer is 100 feet to the west of that?
Correct.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience that wants to be heard? All right, I don't see anybody else. I'll entertain a motion to close the public portion of the hearing.
So moved.
We have a second on that motion?
Second.
We have a seconded motion. Okay, roll call vote. Kelly,
Yep.
Nat,
Yes.
Yes,
and I'm a yes. That's a unanimous vote. The public portion of the hearing is closed. Commissioners, what's your pleasure on this request for delineation?
Make a motion for an ORAD with the additional conditions as mentioned by Mark Garrett.
We have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Could
on
I
that?
could I just add, deleting the flag numbers that are on Ms. Bancroft's property as a condition?
Sure
Yeah,
can.
removing them from her property as
Yeah.
well. Okay, yes, that's a good, thank you, Mark. That was offered by the applicant, so, yes, that should be.
Yeah, I'll amend my motion to that effect.
Okay, do we have a second on that amended motion?
Second.
You have a second on the motion, roll call vote, Nat,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yep.
Jim,
yes.
and I'm a yes, that motion passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone. And we're going, Mark, is there a DEP file number for?
Yes, we did get a file number today. It is 15-2681.
2681, thank you. So we have a public hearing on DEP file 15-2681 from Christina Bowen for drainage improvements to address an existing drainage overflow issue within the buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland. It's on land described as map 49, lot 19, otherwise known as 285 Old Westport Road. I'll entertain a motion to leave the reading.
So moved.
Second.
We have a seconded motion. Roll call vote. Kelly?
Yep.
Nat?
Yes.
Yes,
And I'm a yes, that's unanimous. On behalf of the applicant, who do we have this evening?
My name is Nathan Ketchel. I'm with GGD Consulting Engineers. Also with me is Chris Garcia, as well as Christina Bowen and Jeffrey Martin from UMass Dartmouth, and Basil, who is the owner's project manager on the project. And if you're okay with it, I would like to share my screen.
I am okay with it.
All right. So first I'll start with an overall locus of the campus. This is UMass Dartmouth at 285 Old Westport Road. Campus contains approximately 705 acres of land, generally bound by Old Westport Road to the north, Lucy Little to the west and southwest, and Chase Road to the east. This particular project is occurring in the area of the East Campus dormitories, which is east of the existing ring road that circles the academic buildings. Yeah, so it's over in the area of those dorms. There is a stormwater outfall in the area where my cursor is right now. That does make its way both to the south and to the east towards Chase Road. There have been issues on Chase Road of flooding after larger storm events, and we're hoping to improve that. So this is the existing conditions plan. The area that we're now looking at, this is north is to the right-hand side of the sheet. This is in the area of an existing parking lot that's in the area of the Oak Glen and Pinedale dormitory buildings. There is a 150-foot wide Eversource easement that runs through this area for high voltage electrical wiring. There are a series of gravel and dirt roadways that traverse this area. Underneath this one that my cursor is on is the campus sewer main that makes its way to Chase Road. I'll go over to this one. This is the one in the area of where this head wall is. So There is a series of catch basins and roof drains that serve and or served the former buildings that were in the East Campus dorms. That runoff is collected by pipe that runs in the existing roadway and connects into this head wall that then discharges into a bordering vegetated wetlands that consists of red maple, sweet pepper bush, briar, wetlands fern, and skunk cabbage. In that runoff, it traverses across this resource area in the woods and the easement area, and makes its way to the east into the to Chase Road. Also, we have an existing detention basin to the south of the parking lot, which discharges to another bordering vegetated wetland that we are coming before you requesting permission to do vegetation management within. That basin was permitted by the Conservation Commission. I believe it was under file SC 15-1614. Back when they constructed the dorms that are over in this area. Moving on to the proposal, this one. Actually, sorry, I'll go to the sheet. So what's being proposed to eliminate this source of runoff that goes to Chase Road is to create a first to disturb approximately 3,500 square feet of the resource area to create a stone swale or stone lined swale that would run to the south. Excuse me. That would then go to a head wall and be piped underground to this existing detention basin, the one that we were just discussing, the vegetation management of. So this swale is approximately 500 linear feet long, running at an approximate average slope of 2.5%. It does have a capacity to convey approximately 37 cubic feet of runoff. So we would propose, the swale is proposed to be approximately 1.5 feet deep. There would be a series of check dams along the way to control velocities. And yeah, as I had stated, as you approach the where the parking lot is, it would transition to an underground pipe that would then go into this this pond area. Currently, we are still working with the DPW on stormwater calculations to present to the commission and its peer reviewer. So that is an outstanding thing. As well, there is a portion, and this drawing illustrates it. When they constructed this parking lot back in approximately 2001, 2002, there was some stormwater that bypassed the drainage system and going into that basin. So as I previously said, there is this gravel driveway that runs across to Chase Road. And there is a portion of the runoff from this parking lot that through a driveway connection is not making it to the catch basins that are in the parking lot and is going onto that gravel roadway and discharging into the easement area. So under this project, we are proposing to add curbing and regrading the portion of this driveway and creating a bituminous to modified rock fill swale to direct that stormwater to where it's meant to be going in that stormwater basin. Once this basin is cleared of or maintained and the vegetation cleared from it, we would be proposing that a meadow type wet mix seed be placed in there so that it can deal with the occasional, I'll call it flooding, but use of the pond and be able to survive those moments of inundation. And that's it in a nutshell. And I guess I should also state that the commission did previously approve this type of scope. However, there was a lapse in time before it was the construction of it was exercised. So that was an earlier hearing tonight to close out that order of conditions.
Very good. Thank you. Mark, I'd like to hear staff comments on this application.
Yeah, first and foremost, Nathan is correct. We handled a COC earlier this evening. It was, I think, the last one we handled to close out file number 15-2130, which was largely this proposal that was never constructed. It expired even with the COVID tolling period. It expired in September of 2022. So we had a expired but opened order. So we could not issue another order on the same project under a different order until that was closed. Having said that, this is, in my stay here in Dartmouth, this has been a problem that we have dealt with in my entirety. Basically, it was drainage that was leaving the parking lots of the east dorms and the parking lots adjacent to that road intersection. The water discharging from that did not discharge correctly towards the drainage basin. In fact, ended up rolling to the east downhill through various streams, rivulets, and roadways, and ended up discharging. And I forget what the facility is, but on Chase Road, there is a UMass building. It's set off. It's got a parking lot. I think it's a counseling center or something. I'm not quite sure what the building, what its function is. But water literally cascaded down the hill, across their lawn, across that parking lot, and out into Chase Road, causing, flooding during rainy seasons. But moreover, in the winter, I had seen at least 3 events where it was literally a flow that froze. So you had sheet ice across a fairly large expanse of Chase Road. So it became a very dangerous thing. When we issue the order of conditions for the demo of the dorms, the east side dorms, we did have a condition that we had already been talking about this problem for several years, and we needed it rectified. It took some time, but the proposal that's in front of you right now is in fact what we required of them several years back. In the demo, a little late, but certainly welcome nonetheless to resolve the problem. Again, Nathan is right that this was approved under 2130, that basically this footprint of the project. Yes, there are some wetland impacts involved, but I think those wetland impacts have to be categorized in a couple of things. First of all, it's the way the water is supposed to flow, and the natural contours do not allow for that. And B, much of that wetland, highly managed, very disturbed wetland within the Eversource we have issued orders of conditions for vegetation management through those areas. And in fact, there is a gravel roadway, and I think Nathan mentioned it, where water from the wetland to the west of the easement flows over the gravel and into a wetland area within a fresh, a wet meadow area in the easement itself, and then discharges further east towards Chase Road. Some of that water doesn't cross the gravel roadway. It literally flows down the gravel roadway, in essence, doing what the improved drainage swale would do in a much more designed fashion, and directing that water in its appropriate location to the detention basin, as opposed to free flowing down roadways and eventually getting to Chase Road. Having said all that, I think that I would be ready to approve this project this evening. However, we do not have a complete drainage analysis yet to go forward to our peer consultant. And so we don't have his response. I know Nathan said they're working with DPW, but our peer reviewer still has to see that. And we have yet to receive any information on that as of yet. So once they get a drainage report and their watershed plans and the like, we do have an account number already set up. They did in fact, pay the fee for that. We're just waiting for the product to be reviewed. So at this point, I don't think we have the ability to close the hearing since we don't have all the information. So I would recommend closing this public hearing, and I would ask either Nathan or Chris from
GGD.
Thank you. To suggest a date when they think that they would have the information to us, allowing for our peer review consultant at least a week and a half to 2 weeks to review.
Okay, so that
We'll-
sound like
Yeah.
that would be the first week of May. Is that then?
We have a meeting scheduled for May 9th.
Okay,
Does
yeah,
that-
I mean, if that's gonna, if that typically takes him a week and a half to review, then, I don't think obviously we'd get his comments back in 2 weeks. So.
We still don't have the report, so
Right,
I'm asking you, adding the 2 weeks on, when you think we're gonna get the report for him to review, that's why I'm asking you. You wanna shoot for May 9th?
yeah, let's do that.
So then I'd recommend the continuance until May 9th.
Okay. Do any commissioners have any questions at this time, knowing we're not going to close the public hearing tonight? Is there anyone in the audience that wants to be heard on this? Again, knowing you'll get a chance on the continuance. Okay, commissioners, I'll entertain a motion to continue the public hearing until May 9, 2023 at 7 p.m.
So moved.
We have a second on the motion, please. We have a seconded motion. Roll call vote. Nate,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes,
Kelly,
Yep.
and I'm a yes. That motion passes unanimously. This public hearing is continued until May 9, 2023 at 7 p.m. If anyone is here for that, you won't get a second mailing, but please make note of it on your calendars. And we now move on to our items for discussion that we haven't already discussed. Are there any bills?
I have
Thank you very
nothing under discussion at this point.
Neither do I, so entertain a motion to
Wait.
adjourn.
I have
Oh.
one quick thing. So
Okay.
I hate to do this, guys, but the time has come for me to step away from the commission. And I don't want to put any of you guys in a bind. So I was thinking about making that effective as of the May 9th meeting. So the May 9th meeting would be my last meeting. But I just wanted to let you guys know that that was coming. And I will definitely miss spending Tuesday nights with all of you.
Well, we're gonna miss spending them with you. Well, you've got you're at the point where commitments to other things are also there as well, and there's only so many hours in the day. I appreciate all you've given to the commission.
Thank you. I've definitely enjoyed the time. And yeah, I felt recently that I have been much less present, and that started to get me thinking of whether, I could give it my all. And I think right now just stretched a little thin. So yeah, I'll miss you guys.
Well, Kelly, again, congratulations on a decision I know was hard for you to make, but again, do the best you can on everything else, and that's what we want from you.
Thanks, Mike.
Kelly, thank you for everything. I hate to be administrative about this.
Yep, no, tell me what
Get
you
a,
need
le-
from
get
me.
a, get a letter into the select board and the town administrator notifying them.
Yeah, so do you want me to send it, do you want me to send it directly to them? You want me to send it through you? You tell me what makes
Why don't
sense.
you send it directly to them and copy me?
Sure, will do. That's it. That's all I got. Now I can make a motion to adjourn.
Well, and now let me add something now. As many of you may or may not know, Kyle Ross was interested in rejoining. This might be a good time to
Oh,
reach out.
good. Yeah.
This might be a good time to reach out to him. I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to give Kyle a call and ask him to, formally put it in writing and submit it so we can recommend it if we vote that, recommend it to the select board. So I'm more than happy to reach out to him. For those of you who predated it, Kyle.
I was gonna say, these guys probably weren't
Yeah,
on with him.
Kyle was
He
a
was great,
commissioner, and
phenomenal.
he between his job and at-home constraints, he had to sadly step away, and he let me know a few months back that he would be very interested in rejoining us now. Those commitments aren't what they were. What is it now? 4 years ago since he stepped away, something like that. So your timing is pretty good.
If there had to be a time.
You got pretty good timing here. But yeah, so anyway, I'll reach out to him, and I just want to let you know, you will be missed, and believe it or not, we may even ask you some questions every once in a while.
Anytime. Anytime. Happy to help.
Well, now we got our motion to adjourn,
So moved.
and a second on that motion.
Second,
We have a seconded motion. We have to take a roll call vote. Unbelievable. Jim,
yes.
Matt,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yeah.
and I'm a yes as well. Everyone, have a good night.
Night, everybody.
Take care,
everyone.
guys.